The purpose of story is to reveal a transformation. So, what is a transformation? Well, it's nothing more than a shift in perception. It's suddenly your protagonist sees their situation in a new way. Okay, so it's like a miracle, and yet it's as common as dirt. It happens all the time. Um, the end of the story is where your protagonist reframes their relationship to their desire. Okay, in other words, transformation isn't just where I want something and then I get it. It's where I want something and then I understand at the end of the story, I understand it in a new way. Okay, so for example, freedom. The beginning of the story, freedom might mean escape. By the end of the story, freedom might mean acceptance. Or let's say my story is about justice. And I believe that justice will be done when I get revenge on my enemy. And by the end of the story, I discover that justice actually means compassion. If all that happens at the end of your story is your protagonist gets what they want, we're going to be very disappointed. We don't want Jimmy Stewart to leave Bedford Falls at the end of It's a Wonderful Life. We want him to discover that he has a wonderful life right here in town because he's helped the townsfolk. I want to give you a really powerful exercise right now. So I call this the transformation exercise. I want you to write for 5 minutes, and I want you to imagine your protagonist transformed at the end of the story. 2 points. How am I relating differently at the end than I was at the beginning? And what do I understand at the end that I didn't understand at the beginning? All right, go for 5 minutes, and now let's talk about it. What you're going to discover is that everything you wrote sprang from an image. And so I want you to go down this list of images. Let's say, for example, how am I relating differently to my mother at the end of the story? Let's say at the end of the story, I'm hugging my mother. Well, where earlier in the story are we not getting along? Do you understand? In other words, if I'm hugging my mother at the end of the story, there needs to be a context for what that means. And so I need to show in some way its opposite so that we understand what the hug means. I'm getting along with my spouse. Where were we fighting earlier? All right, and on and on and on. This is an exercise you want to do every morning for 5-10 minutes. And what's going to happen is you're going to start to sort of plant a flag for your protagonist at the end of the story. You're going to start to have a deep connection for your protagonist at the end of the story. Notice we're not talking about the plot. We're not trying to figure out how your story ends. Character suggests plot. By connecting to your protagonist's experience at the end of the story, plot naturally emerges. I always joke that writing class is the difference between writing class and therapy is that in writing class, you're guaranteed a transformation because all you have to do is imagine it. Okay, and so what happens is when you start to imagine your protagonist transformed, your subconscious starts to build a bridge to that place. Your subconscious instantly gets activated and says, well, how on earth does my protagonist arrive at this place where she can forgive her mother? And they can have some kind of, peace together. So if you want to have a really dynamic arc for your protagonist, imagine your protagonist transformed, but don't concern yourself with how on earth he or she is going to arrive at that place. Your subconscious will begin to make that connection for you. Thanks for your questions. Please send any questions you have to al@lawriterslab.com, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.